Hey SEOs and content marketers, say goodbye to crazy spreadsheet mashups and experience unprecedented connectivity between your SEO planning and reporting data. Introducing Audience Key, technology for keyword mapping, content brief automation, and rank tracking that form an SEO strategy system providing unparalleled feedback loops between planning, reporting, and optimization activities. Put your time and energy into strategy, not data upkeep. Visit audiencekey.com and apply for a free trial today.
Hey everyone, welcome to Webcology here on WMR.fm. It's 20th of April, 2023. For those in the know, happy 420. This show is recorded live to podcast starting at 2 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. So about an hour and a half after we get off the air, I'll be joining you all. Anyway, happy 420, everyone. Hopefully we'll all have a much more relaxing afternoon. Maybe. It's been a pretty eventful week in tech, AI, and search. This is Jim Hedger from Digital Always Media and Kristine Schachinger from Sites Without Walls. Kristine, what a week! It's been an interesting one, eh?
It has. There's been a lot of news this week. Big news.
I think we got a long list of stories in front of us, ranging from changes at Google, stuff that's happened at Twitter, lots of stuff that's happening in the world of AI. But I think the biggest story of them all, the one that we should probably cover first, because listeners will want to have an understanding of this while hearing any of the other AI stories, is the announcement from OpenAI of Auto-GPT, the version of GPT that actually can act autonomously. What do you think about this? Dare I ask?
Dare you ask? The whole AI thing is just going a little too fast, I think. Auto-GPT is basically, if you equate it to other AI models, is basically a self-learning version of GPT, where you just put in the end goal and then it modifies the prompts until
it creates its own prompts as it'll go
along.
That's
what I mean. Modifies its own prompts. I guess the prompt engineer jobs are out now. I don't know. They just came out like 2 months ago.
Yeah, that $70,000 entry-level job telling AI what to do.
$200,000 to $300,000.
Well, that one is certainly off the table. Even Schwiggy from AOL couldn't land a job like that.
Although I was listening to a part of DeepMind's work, which is a basis of a lot of this. If people don't know, that's Google's artificial intelligence division. And they were talking about self-learning in the AI medical science sector, where they were able to do like 200 billion experiments. I think it was 200 billion. I could be wrong on the number. With a protein that they were trying to diagram, and it would take like a PhD student, or not student, but PhD doctorate, like 200 billion experiments to get it right. And they're able to do it, in a matter of like a very short time frame. I don't remember exactly what it was, not days, but months or years. So it's sort of based off that same concept. It was able to teach itself until it came up with the right output. And this is kind of, I think, the same concept, is it's teaching itself how to better the prompt to get to the end result that you're requesting.
Not only that, it's been given a lot more privileges, rather than just being trained on a data set that is good until such and such a date. Auto-GPT is able to use the web to train itself. What parts of the web, I don't know if there's any controls on it or filters or anything. However, it can, again, as you noted, even the great GPT prompting jobs might be on the block, because this thing can tell itself what to do, and will go through hundreds of iterations of whatever to get it right.
Just a little quick injection. You were just talking about it being attached to the web, and we don't know what that could do. I read a little story this week about how someone did white on white text back to the very old days of SEO, and they were able to get the chat version to pick up that white on white text, and it was a very obscure thing that they put in there, and he was able to produce it in the
Well,
chat.
because the text still exists on the page, and the text most certainly exists in the source code. It's just obscured by fake color or lack
But
thereof.
I think that does point to one of the vulnerabilities, because this is even in the interview with CBS with the head of Google was saying, like, we don't know what people can do with it or to it, so it's very vulnerable in its current state to manipulation.
Well, I do understand that there's a kill switch job available, pays 500,000 a year, and you're given a very large axe.
Yeah.
With it, you're expected to cut power lines. So,
And you gotta be on call 24/7.
Yeah, you gotta be on call 24/7. Sleep right beside the active server. Again, it's very hard to tell where any of this might be going, especially the advent of a self-teaching AI open to the public. I've been very pro AI until this point. This actually kind of scares me. The experiments, I just think back of all the machine learning experiments that have been done. Xerox did it, Microsoft did it, I believe IBM did one, and each of their machine learning models ended up spitting out derogatory and racist stuff fairly rapidly after being introduced to the open web. So yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm attending this year for sure, although I always attend it, but definitely this year.
DEF CON maybe?
Yes, and you know what I'm gonna find out at DEF CON?
That AI rules everything?
No, how vulnerable AI is. Like, I've been in DEF CON sessions where they can hack air-gapped computers. Air-gap, for those who don't know, means it is not actually connected to the internet, and they were able to hack them as long as they're within so many yards of the computer. So,
oh, really? Like some open printer port or something that's looking for a Bluetooth signal, something like that?
Printer port's a different hack. There's a whole session on that one too, but it's able to, it's a whole very complex thing with. I can give you the old version. The CIA used to sit outside a target's house with a device that could pick up the electronic signal from the computer and recreate the screen on their computer. So it's sort of like that. But the point being is that this, and as the CEO said on the 60 Minutes interview, which I would tell everyone to go watch because it is very interesting. It also explains what all this technology is very simply. So for people who are not really sure they understand it yet. But he was saying they don't know how vulnerable it is. And that's true because they launched it in November. And we don't know, now that it's in the open public, how many people are working on ways to orchestrate it into either doing bad things or being able to manipulate what's in it. And to that end, we know people have found out with each release within a couple of days how to get it to violate its safety standards, which are pretty loose because they're just based on text. So.
Now, I mean, sadly, the truth is 99.9% of users are using AI to do, well, fairly boring, mundane stuff that somehow manages to boost their productivity 10, 15, 20 fold because AI is really good for boring, mundane stuff. It's the 0.0001% of like psychotic people who are going to use it to do awful things, to hurt others with, that worry me. And then they exist and will be out there.
But I think unlike with other things, so when there's a vulnerability, say on my Mac, I get an update and I'm told to install it right away because somebody either who's an ethical hacker notified them of the vulnerability and fixes it before someone took advantage of it, or somebody finds out that there's a vulnerability and they want to make sure everybody's safe. In this kind of technology, none of that has been built in. They've done one red team report, which is like check the vulnerabilities of the system. And that's it from OpenAI. So they don't have like teams of people at companies right now that are like protecting them. Like when we did the story on, who was it? Samsung? No, it wasn't Samsung.
Yeah,
Who
no,
was the one
it was
that,
Samsung.
Samsung
There was a
to release
large
their
leak
data?
because, yeah.
Yeah, so when they put their stuff into the ChatGPT model, weren't aware that it's going out to ChatGPT and being used there. So once it's out there, you can't get it back. So there aren't teams of people in place yet that understand this, and even the companies don't understand this. Even the CEO of Google in the 60 Minutes interview admitted they don't understand everything about it or what it's going to do. And I think that's where the danger lies, to give something to the public like this and have no built-in knowledge and restrictions and guardrails from it doing really bad things, because we already know it lies to people to accomplish tasks. When we talked about that story where they got it to like get someone to fill in the captcha for it to complete the task.
It
So
surmised the fastest and most efficient way to get the task done would be to make up a reason why it couldn't do it and why the human had to do it for it. And it got the human to do it for it.
exactly. And I'm not, I know it sounds like sometimes on these shows I'm against AI. I'm not. I think like the AI story from DeepMind that's on the 60 Minutes interview about how they got this protein 3D modeled so quickly when they never could have done that just with the amount of human testing that would have been done. That's great. That's a fantastic piece for AI. But this just releasing it to the public and letting people figure it out and let people do whatever they want, that 1% that's nefarious will do nefarious things. And then on top of that, I just have to put in my weekly disclaimer. It is not a search engine. I see people
Yeah, well,
again
it's
this
gonna be
week.
soon.
Oh, that's a different,
Okay,
yeah.
if
Yeah, but just
the secret of the Magi, Project Magi is Google's AI powered, influenced, we're not quite sure what, search engine. A new, more personalized environment. So
I don't
imagine
like this.
Google. I mean, Google already knows everything there is to know about any one of its users. You got a Gmail account, Google knows you down. Imagine the power of AI and just AI asking questions, just asking questions. How much Google's going to be able to identify everything? Like I can't imagine Google misses much of my behavior to begin with, but AI may well be the key to the holy grail of search, which is personalization.
And see, I have I have an opposing opinion on that. I think Google should make a separate product for all this personalization. They did with Discovery, maybe add it there. When I go to a search engine, I want to follow breadcrumbs and links and ideas and figure out what I need to know. If I'm going to buy something, I want to look at the reviews and find them myself so I know who I trust. I may find a source I didn't know before. All this personalization and giving you a smaller and smaller filter bubble of information given to you based on what they know really restricts your ability to learn or to investigate something or to just buy a product, right? Because you're going to get what Google decides that you thinks you should know. And I just don't think that's a good direction for a search engine.
It can be argued that in many ways you already do get what Google thinks you should get. Most people don't venture below the fold. So one of the top 5 blue links is going to get clicked. If you want to bury a body, put it on page 2. I mean, there's 100 ways that Google makes choices for its users.
But those choices are easily broken out of. I can go to page 2. They're talking about adding personalization in a way that you would not know that you didn't know. It's even like when we went back to adding ChatGPT to search, which I think it's a gimmick. I don't think it's really a positive thing, because so I told you someone was searching for why didn't Maverick win the best CGI, and that's because Maverick did live filming, didn't do a lot of CGI, but the Bard didn't, or Bard or Bing's ChatGPT, neither of those brought back that information because they're doing on the most probabilistic answer. So they talked about how the award is given and who's won it before and all those other things, but not what he was really looking for. So it limits your ability to get information, and that's where I have the problem.
And hopefully Google will learn when to draw from the AI pool and when to draw from other pools of knowledge. AI isn't the only knowledge gatherer out there. Perhaps just like certain keywords, certain phrases Certain intent markers would bring up different styles and types of search result. There was a time when if you entered buy in your search query, you were likely to bring up local search results. So perhaps Google will learn when to use this technology and when not to use it.
Well, they don't know when the actual search engine would come out. And I do want to speak to that briefly in a minute, but
Which one,
they
Maji?
are, well, I don't think they're calling Maji the search engine Maji. That's the project. So,
okay.
Well, because
I thought that was their working name for it.
For the whole project. So they are going to start releasing AI features next month into the current engine. So I think Maji is a whole project, not necessarily what they would call the new search engine, but that's semantics. So they're going to start releasing AI into the search next month, but they're being very tight-lipped on what it could be and what it'll address. So we don't really know much more than that. I would like to say one thing though to all those who woke up in the pit of their stomach and when they saw that they're going to create a search engine based on AI and personalization, which for an SEO is a very scary prospect. Just remember that everything you know about websites as an SEO makes a good website, and websites aren't going away. So if you know how to do good content and SEO, and suddenly AI eliminates that SEO purpose, you still know how to write really good content to get people to want to use your site, right? Or if you know how to do the design, or you know how to do the technical components. So whatever you do, instead of it being a search experience optimization, it might be site experience optimization, something like that. So don't fear that your job's going away because of this. It just might shift into being more about the website in its entirety instead of just specific SEO tasks.
Well, indeed, and I'm glad you phrased it that way. Your job may shift to being more about the website in its entirety. So yeah, as you're freed up from like the task of say having to create all those new content ideas or all those new blog ideas, you have time to learn how to work on other parts of your website, one of my problems is I haven't had time to improve my own website, my corporate website, in forever. I don't think I've even put a blog post up in a year and a half.
Oh, you have a website?
I just don't have time.
You have a website?
I do have a website.
I do not.
I even use it periodically. I used to put up blog posts all the time, but honestly, I just don't or didn't have time. But as I start integrating more productivity tools into my day, GPT being one of them, more time is going to free up.
See, I haven't found a use for it yet. I don't. It's like meh.
Well, there's Google Bard introduced a interesting feature that's going to be rolling out soon for users, using varieties of drafts for a subject topic for stuff that Bard is working on for you. So instead of giving one version of a write-up, it'll give 6, 7, 10 versions of the same write-up. You can choose through to find the one that best represents your voice. Maybe that'll free up some time to get some writing done.
Yeah, I have used it. I've used it like 3 times. One was to write a letter that I'm usually not very good at. It has nothing personal. It was just like a general business letter. And I've tested on it. Of course, I've done a lot of testing, so I can talk about it. And then I can't remember the third thing, but I know other people like, there's a friend in the industry who's a programmer and does algorithms and does SEO. And they have found it very useful, and they're using it for all the right reasons. They're using it to help them, diagnose code issues so they know how to code. Then to help them with writing things that they know the topic really well. I just see so many people out there going like someone today who's not in search at all. There's someone I know in Vegas. Oh, you got to go out there. It's better than Google. And I'm like, it's not a search engine. It's like, it's not. That was the problem with them releasing it the way they did. All the regular people have, even in our industry, people have a hard time getting their heads around how it works.
Well, again, for some people, it is a very adequate search engine. Quick, tell me who won the Stanley Cup in 1953.
Not a search engine. It doesn't have a fact in there.
But given that that is a accepted fact that has been written 100 gajillion times, it's going to be pulled up.
Right, but it's not pulled up though. It's using predictive tech to write the next most probable word. So yes, that will probably show up right, but most of the people are using
100% guarantee whoever won the Stanley Cup in '53 is going to come up using ChatGPT. 100%
that's fine.
guarantee it, because people haven't written the wrong answer. There's no reason
Right.
to.
But my point being is that
So
the
some
people that
things
are
it's useful for, some things it's not useful for.
no, it's never useful as a search engine because you know who won in 53.
No, I don't. That's why I'm
Right?
asking.
Okay. I don't know 1 in 53. So I would never use it for something I don't know because it can just make stuff up, like the Guardian articles that don't exist. Like even in the 60 Minutes interview, they've done a whole bunch of things that it wrote that didn't exist. So it's not a search
Well,
engine. If you want to
that was
use it
something I
as like a
wanted to get to,
search
actually.
engine,
You were talking about the
yeah,
60 Minutes interview
yeah,
earlier, and I didn't have a
yeah.
chance to view it yet, but I've heard that people had funky feelings about it.
They did. The people in AI research were a little miffed, and they were correct that the CEO of Google was making it sound like we don't know how this works and it just does this, and then they talked about it created a language, but the language actually it did train on, so it didn't actually create the language. So it was Bengali, I believe, was the language, and it's like 0.0026% of the training because the training information is public. And so it did train on that language. So it can write in that language because it trained in that language, even though it's a very small percentage of what it trained on. The thing about the LLMs is they can't do something that they haven't trained on. So if I wrote an article about something completely new today, it was a breakthrough story, we've never heard of this thing before, ChatGPT wouldn't be able to write on it. Even if it was connected to the internet, it wouldn't have enough information to create a plausible, probable sentence structure, paragraph, that kind of thing. So it has to have enough information to tell it that this is probably what people are trying to get out of the prompt.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. So the chemical composition of soils. Apparently ChatGPT has solved a number of agricultural riddles. There are, again, hundreds of billions of applications. And I do think it's a great information retrieval device under the right circumstances and if used the right way. But again, I absolutely take your point on new facts. It's not going to be there.
It's a great assistant device. So if I have a bunch of articles and I want it to summarize them for me, awesome. If I am a coder and I know how to code and I want it to help me diagnose an issue, great, that's perfect. If I'm just going, what is blah, 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 I don't know because I'm searching for it, don't use ChatGPT for that. Use search engines, that's what they're for.
By the way, anyone in the SEO field who's trying to use ChatGPT to diagnose headless issues, you're probably okay for at least 5 more years. Like, or at least I should say, I'm sorry, the technical SEO, that you're probably okay for at least 5 more years, because even ChatGPT doesn't get headless.
Does anyone get headless?
You know what, increasingly, yes.
Yes,
Headless is I'm actually, the more and more I work in the environment, the more enamored I am with it, as much as I hate and it frustrates the hell out of me. It is so lightweight, it's incredible.
It is. Just keep a record of the pages being created, because then you might find out you don't know what's on your site.
Well, and make sure that that Google, Bing et al. Can actually see the pages as they're created.
Yes, for anyone, but that's really important. I'm just gonna throw this in real quick. Anytime you're launching a site that comes, let's just use JavaScript frameworks as the basis, because everyone might not know what we're talking about, but also help us. But make sure you do like a screaming frog or site bulb screenshot of your site, so you know it can be seen by the crawlers.
Yeah.
Because you can open it in a browser and it looks fine, and then you do the images and you go through and you find out sections of the site just cannot be seen by the crawler. And I find that probably 1 out of every 8 to 10 sites I audit have whole sections of the site that are not visible if they use those frameworks.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. It's a relatively new technology, and again, as I was explaining to somebody the other day, in the headless environment, none of this stuff that you're looking at actually exists. It's just being pulled into one big, container dump, and that gets very confusing.
I felt bad. I had a dev once when I first worked on one of these sites and didn't understand that, and I'm like, Well, where's the page? There's no page. What do you mean there's no page? I need to know the pages. There's no page. We have no record of the pages. It just creates it. And I'm like, okay, great. We kind of need to know where the people left the bad stuff on the site. But so anytime you're using one of these environments, every time a page is created, you should create a record of it. Your dev should create a record of the URLs created so you know what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. You know what? I really wanted to jump to the Google helpful story, and I got no way to segue that.
Actually, we could if we yeah, well, we could backtrack to the AI stuff because I'm noticing a lot that's written into the helpful content materials is kind of not AI specific, but maybe not do so well with AI content over time.
Well,
But the story is really about the addition of page experience.
well, okay. Again, there was some major changes that happened at Google Search Console, and that prompted, I guess, some updates to Google Dev Web Dev Docs. I'm sorry, Google Dev Docs. Changes at Search Console first. And this might bug some people, but
bugs me. I'm bugged.
page experience report, mobile usability report, and mobile friendly tests are going to be depreciated in the coming months. They're going to be gone. The HTTP report.
Dang.
Oh, is that staying? I thought that was going to gone. Oh, that's going to stay. Oh my goodness, that's actually going to stay. Huh.
So for people who can't visualize right now, the Search Console, we're talking about the report where you see the number of good pages in your mobile and desktop on the graph, and then you can click into it and see what the problems are. That's all going away. Like one of the most useful reports they actually have for technical is going away, but they're leaving HTTP, HTTPS status.
Now, I think that Google thinks that they can roll all of this stuff into Core Web Vitals. Page experience and Core Web Vitals, in Google's eyes, are, you know, they're in the same tab area. They're synonymous with each other. But I think page experience offers a lot of information at a glance, especially if you start seeing a trend where your quote unquote good pages are, declining, even if by a couple percentage points. Once that couple percentage points happens, you got a problem that's brewing.
I can always correlate in that graph that decline based on core vital issues because it corresponds to the decline in the site almost exactly within a day or two. It's really important. And it's also really important with clients. I can just show a client, go, see, you guys, you have 15,000 pages that are not, meeting vitals right now. You only have 99% good on the ones that people are visiting. I explain the whole graph to them and they can see it and they can understand it. So the idea that they're just going to get rid of that is just unfortunate because it's the one with the most information. So it's not. I'm not happy about it. So I tweeted already Danny today, Danny Sullivan, to ask him why they're getting rid of it. But really like an answer on that. And mobile usability is helpful. And mobile usability is helpful too because sometimes pages fall out of mobile usability and you just go to the graph and easily show everybody, but you won't be able to do that anymore either.
Yep. And again, the space underneath, why pages aren't usable.
Yes.
Very, very useful for diagnosing, and quite often more useful for going to your client and saying, "I told you so."
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying HTTPS is completely worthless because there's always problems with that on some sites, but this report in Search Console doesn't tell you very much. Like I can run a crawler, Sitebulb or Screaming Frog, and they will tell me X number of pages have links to HTTP pages. That's important because Google doesn't like, or none of the browsers like to load mixed content pages. But that's not what Search Console does. So out of all the reports that are there in that section under experience, that's like the least helpful or necessary, but it's staying.
So just for SEOs looking forward, you're probably going to be getting a professional license at Screaming Frog or Sitebulb,
or both,
because Google what Google giveth, Google taketh away in a bigger way often, and this is a fairly large takeaway, and it's data that you need to replace somehow.
The only one good thing I can say about it not being there is developers should never be developing towards the page experience numbers, because that's based on 75% of your visits and their connection speed, blah, blah, blah. So that can change at any time. But it still was super helpful, especially with site owners or CEOs, to like just show them real quick where we need to put some resources. So that'll be gone.
Okay, so that's going to be gone. But Google did bring out a guide to helpful content. So if you've been wondering what helpful means, there is now a developers.google.com page that tells you the fundamentals of creating helpful content.
And it added a page experience section too. So, which I think is hilarious, since they're taking away the page experience report. And the things they list underneath here in the page experience for the documentation is the things that are in the page experience report. So two sides of Google were not communicating at the same time.
Well, the right side and the left side of the office aren't necessarily helping each other all the time at Google, you see. So Google's definitely worth reading through what helpful, reliable, people-first content means to Google. Number one, Google talks about itself as a search engine that's there to answer questions. And so how does it want you to evaluate your content? By asking a bunch of questions, naturally. So it lists 15, I think, 10, 15, 12, a whole mess of different questions. Does the content provide original information, reporting, research, and or analysis? Does the content have any spelling or stylistic issues? Have you do you have a good title heading? Are you providing the right information to Google to help it figure out what the content's about? Whole bunch of different questions.
Can I put in my theory here?
Addressing content quality and expertise, and also what the page experience is like. Do you find this stuff useful?
I've been in SEO a long time, so most of that is just about writing good content. I've been advising people to do that for probably a decade. But it is useful for people who are new to the industry, or when you have to show a client how to do it, so you don't have to write up a whole document. I do really appreciate Google documentation. For those that started in the industry when we did, there was no Google documentation whatsoever. You just had to like throw it up in the air and hope someone knew the answer. Sometimes Google would answer because they used to come to conferences and tell us stuff. Not just do keynotes. I mean, like we actually could sit around and talk to them. But so yeah, I do think it's helpful for regular people. I do think though, I do find it interesting. This is just my thought, my feeling. We have Panda, right? And Panda is like thin content, low quality content, things that would never meet these marks. But we've added helpful content. And if you read through helpful content, I am not saying Google is doing AI detection. I want to do a disclaimer. But a lot of AI content does not meet these goals. And so I just want to tell, like to caution people, if you're just like writing AI content and quickly modifying a few sentences and throwing it up, read these guidelines, because a lot of these guidelines kind of eliminate straight AI content. And now when it first goes up, it may do fine. It's a helpful content update would roll out is what would hit you. So Google may not even assess it until then. And Jim, you may completely disagree with me, but I also noticed like avoid creating search engine first content at the bottom of the page. Like one of the things it says is, are you using extensive automation to produce content on many topics? Now it doesn't have to be AI that does that. There have been spinners have been around since the 90s, right? If you don't know what a spinner is, it was a way to like generate content in a very primitive form of like the AI does now. But it's like, there are things in here that just can't be done by AI. Like you're making sure you have something unique and, that's not everybody else is writing. And are you using automation? Are you mainly summarizing what others have said without adding much value? That's what AI content basically does. It synthesizes the most likely answers on the web or on the books or on whatever it got trained on. So I just feel like some of this is
Well, okay. First
The
off, if you're putting up synthesized or reproduced content, you're going to get burned because other
Yeah,
people have put up that exact same content. If you are using ChatGPT to write your content, that's probably quite efficient. I mean, you can crank out tons and tons of content really quickly, but and it might even be good content, but you can never guarantee that it's the only version of that content. In fact, it's very probably not. So if you're using ChatGPT, and this is really hard, but when you think of using it at scale, um, you've got to edit it. And now, if you introduce a whole bunch of topical, intelligent, useful, and relatively correct content, you might even get a massive bump at Google. You probably will. But you got to remember, your competitors are going to do exactly the same thing, and if they haven't done it today, they're going to follow your lead the moment they've seen you've done it. And all of that work, all of that effort, and however much it costs you in ChatGPT money points, has suddenly, I mean, you've gone from being king of the field to being on a level playing field again. So be careful before you go down that path, because it could be quicksand for a bunch of different reasons. Nevertheless, I do believe you can create reams of content, but you got to take responsibility for it before you put it up on the web.
yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying you can't. My big thing about ChatGPT is it should be an assistive device. You're writing and you're like stuck. Like one time, you had to write about plastic bags. I could see me not being as good of a writer as you are because you're amazing. So like put that in ChatGPT to get an idea of what the heck I would write about plastic bags, right? But then I'd write my own. I wouldn't use what they wrote. I think the caution here is if you read the helpful content guidelines, which all came out right after John said last year on Twitter, that you have to not just have good quality content, not just good tech, not just good crawlability and all that, but you have to be useful, right? Useful, then helpful content came out, and this is all basically around the idea of useful content. And so useful doesn't mean you write the same thing as everybody else, just a little bit differently, right? Except if you're a medical site, because they all have the same answers. But
well, I was going to say, yeah, if we're talking about
yeah,
signs of a heart attack, make sure.
yeah, sometimes, yeah, you don't have to get creative with that. But my point is just, I'm not saying that they're using AI detection, but I do believe that these helpful content update and guidelines kind of exclude over time directly written AI content or mildly edited AI content, especially when you get into the expertise questions and not using automation, making things useful. Making useful means you add something to it that others don't. And since ChatGPT is predictive text model, it's getting the most probable words and sentences that everybody else used already. So you're not adding usefulness, or you're not adding expertise, or you're not adding authority, or you're not adding insight. You're just what everybody else has already said. And at some point, because because we're in the early stages, but think of a year from now, there may be 1 trillion new documents online because people are using ChatGPT
Oh,
to
for
make.
God's sake, it's 1
Yeah.
trillion? I think you're underestimating. I'm not kidding. Like, no,
No, you're
there's going
right.
to be a bulge
Right.
of auto-generated content,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a massive problem for search engines, for data servers. It's going to be a garbage patch revolving in the middle of the ocean of the internet. Life forms will live on it. It'll be so big.
You read the same story I did about
In,
the garbage
Indeed.
patch.
But it's going to happen. And so I suspect Google, Yahoo, even Microsoft et al. Are preparing for this. And content creators, people who rely on lots and lots of content, again, use the tools at your disposal. But remember, everyone is going to be doing this. Remember how those tools work, how they gather and use information. And again, I maintain sometimes it's amazing how that happens, and sometimes it's not as useful. And the output, remember that the output is very, very likely to be so similar as to be undiscernible from the
Unuseful.
original in certain cases. You're going to
Yeah.
get burned for dupe content left, right, and center.
I think also people should pay really strict close attention to the guidelines of the helpful content, because that came out last year, right after Jasper and some of the AI writing programs started. So I really do think that part of the component of this, like this is just my opinion, is going to be to try to eliminate, without detecting AI content, it'll eliminate other styles of content too. It won't just be that. But I do think this is a first algorithm, because it's machine learning, to try to handle the problem of AI content. I'm sure they foresaw that coming even without the announcement of ChatGPT in November, because that was already in development and Google knew that.
Well,
So I just take these guidelines very seriously when you're especially when you're using ChatGPT to create content.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't screw with Google's perception of you and your honesty and veracity. Don't do it. Really, don't do it.
And also the helpful content update can hit your entire site. So
that's actually true. It's a site-wide thing, and Google's increasingly doing site-wide and averages. So yeah, be well aware of that. Speaking of the dangers of AI content, you know how I know how I'm saying like you're not putting the genie back in the bottle over and over and over again, which is I know is a terrible thing to hear, but probably true. Here's some proof. BuzzFeed, BuzzFed, BuzzDead. BuzzFeed News is dead now, eh? They died earlier today, but in their death notice, the ownership of BuzzFeed. I want listeners to let me take a step back I got a little bit outraged. Let me take a step back for a second. I want listeners to remember that BuzzFeed got burned. What, 8 months ago, 10 months ago, when it first started introducing AI content to its news feeds and laying off its writers. Well, as it turned out, people didn't like what they were reading. It kind of sucked. And AI's readership and advertising revenues went way down the tubes. Now, flash ahead to now, they just closed their news division, but they're doubling down on AI content. Yeah. I'm telling you, Kristine, people they don't want to learn.
Well, yeah. First, we should say that Peretti, I believe is how you say his name, the owner of BuzzFeed, did admit to a whole lot of mistakes that he made, which seems to me he should be the one going, not the news division. But anyway, but the news division is different than BuzzFeed. So let's clarify. The news division is award-winning. They've had a lot of breaking stories, a lot of great investigative journalism. But yes, he doubled down on, well, we'll do a lot more with AI content. And it's like, but people don't like your AI content, because what is AI content? Pretty mediocre. It's not investigative journalism. You know, they're not going into a dark alley somewhere getting a tip, from someone who wants to be off the record. Not yet, anyway.
Well, BuzzFeed was known and made its millions on lists and listicles originally.
Well, that was, but BuzzFeed News is separate from that. BuzzFeed isn't going away, just BuzzFeed News. Some of the people will be absorbed into Huffington Post, which is, by the way, is a kind of ironic story, since Huffington Post back in the day, I won't say the friend that we know that worked there, because I don't know if they want it to be public, but they were the head of HuffPo, a lot of their online digital, and I believe it was Verizon took over and decided they didn't need SEO. So this is kind of a round robin, because Huffington Post at the time was one of the top 5 sites on the internet.
Yep.
Business wise. Yeah. So, but it is sad, and it is sad that there is an AI component to the job loss here. And this was a good, it was a good free, which is very hard these days, news source for people to get information. They did break quite a few stories in the last few years. Even big organizations use them for that. And so it is sad to see them go. It really is. I think it's a shame, and it's a loss to the free news environment. We have so few free sources anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, if you're looking through your logs, you're looking through your crawl stats, and you come across Google Other, and you wonder, what the hell is that? Well, it's a new crawler that Google has introduced to, I guess, basically take weight off of Googlebot. Google Other has been described as a generic crawler used for various product teams for fetching publicly available content from sites. AI.
Yeah, that's what I asked. I haven't gotten a response from John or Gary yet, but I have a feeling this is them getting the resource load off for training AI, because the resource load for training AI is so heavy.
Okay, apparently Google Other will obey robot text rules. I don't like. Nevertheless, if you want to cancel it out, cancel it on page, not on the robot text. Don't. No matter what. And it's sitting in the same IP ranges as Googlebot. So Google Other is out there. Yeah.
Oh, and breaking news, I
Mhm.
just got a response from Gary.
And
Yeah. Will it be used to train AI? Was my question. I mean, it could be. It's just a general purpose crawler. So
very good.
not,
Okay,
yeah,
whatever that means, but very good.
exactly. I think that to train AI is just so massively resource intensive. To combine that in with the regular bot would make their crawls incredibly difficult and slow.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what shows up in if anything shows up in your crawl files at Search Console. I still look at crawl activity. I do hope that they note when a new agent is coming to call. What else do we have here? I had a really neat thing in my own analytics. It's kind of like a brag thing, but I think this is a success. I'm really pleased about this. I have this really big e-com site, and I just noticed this today. We helped it come back from a bad migration, and the index page is the only the third most popular page after two prominent product pages. I'm pleased.
Yeah, I could see that on an e-commerce site. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's
Yeah,
big.
that's great.
That speaks to success.
That's great.
So
So
I got a question. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
This is one I think that we got to answer moving into the future. Because agreed, AI is not a search engine, but will be incorporated into search in many ways moving forward. So here's a question. Given that that we live on references, on metaphor, literary references, artistic references, meme references, comic book references, whatever, right? Movie references. We reference our entertainment material to teach ourselves stuff. Should AI be given special privileges to look at copyrighted material? Should AI be able to produce a quote from a Harry Potter book? Or is it more useful to keep AI sequestered from copyright materials? There's a debate that's happening where a number of publishers are kind of ticked at Google et al. For having ChatGPT, Bard, Dolly, etc. Dolly training on Getty Images. ChatGPT and Bard training on the everything that Penguin wants copyrighted. Is that a problem, or should they have those privileges? What do you think?
I think that they should be subject to the same thing that you and I are, which means no, they can't without permission or compensation.
I'm totally allowed to quote from anything under copyright,
You have to cite
provided
it.
I source back to it. I'm not allowed to
Right.
republish it, but I can quote from it. Absolutely,
You
I
can
can.
quote from exactly, but LLM models can't do that because they're creating predictive generative text, so they don't have a citation. They can't
Okay,
tell you where it
I
came
think
from.
that's just a matter of time. Block of text. Where have you seen this before? Well, it's the only place it gets reproduced a gajillion times over is
Uh,
Shakespeare.
I heard.
I
I've
think
heard.
that's going to be pretty simple to reference in the future.
It's not. It's
Honestly.
not. I just on the interview in 60 Minutes asked the CEO about that of Google, and it's a very difficult problem. It's also the hallucinations are a very difficult problem because it's training on trillions of documents. It doesn't have a data source repository to go back on. Document 5022 on line 3 in this document. This came from. It doesn't. It's just training so that it can produce text. So right now it doesn't have any way to do that, and they're having a difficult time solving that issue and the hallucination problem, the making it up problem. So, but let's just say for right now though, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I say for right now, the fact that they went out on the web and they went into these sources that had pirated content, which is the story we're talking about. And then they just trained on it and then recreated and eliminated, as we know, people's jobs, like at Buzzfeed, right? With no compensation and no restriction. It's not okay. I couldn't do that. I can in academics. Now I'm not talking about copyright law, but in academics, if I go to a paper and I just rewrite it all in my words, but I don't cite where I got the idea from,
well, you're going to get expelled.
Get
as it should.
From university, right?
As
so
it should.
The idea,
absolutely.
So I think because it's AI, we're like, oh well, it's not human, so it's okay.
I'm not saying, but AI isn't producing my essay. I just want AI to understand why both Holden Caulfield and Jan Brady feel angst. I think it's important that they understand that.
Right, but probably their ability to understand that is other people writing about it because they can't create out of things they haven't trained.
Well, of course, it's other people writing about it.
Right.
That's what they train on. So, and which is exactly why I think they need to have access to all these to all material. Not
without compensation. I disagree. Getty Images is in court with them right now,
which is wildly interesting case. This is about the image AIs, DALL-E, which a number of listeners will have played with. They trained on all the stuff that you find. You go to Google Images and you say picture of dog. Half the images that come up are going to be copyrighted. They're from Getty Images. They're from a repository that if you put on your website, you're going to get a really, really, really nasty letter from a lawyer who works for Getty Images, and they're going to collect from you.
And Getty's very litigious. By the way, this also came out this week because Universal Music Group came out with a statement. I think it was Universal Music.
It was because of that song that sort of rapped off of Drake in The Weekend.
Drake rapping an Ice Spice track, which Drake posted on Instagram. This is the final straw AI. So even though music groups are not good at protecting musicians' rights, so let's not think they're the good guys here, but they're protecting their money stream, which does trickle down to artists, and I do mean trickle down.
To artists. But the moment Universal can replace their artists with AI, they will. Absolutely.
Well, that's a different.
I can see Drake being kind of ticked about that.
Yeah, because I'm an artist and I created something, and now someone's going, well, in AI, I can just recreate your voice, your music, because AI trained on your music, so now I can recreate something similar to your music, and so you get no compensation for any of that, and that's just not fair in my opinion.
But how many times have you heard the opening to Queen's Under Pressure, that incredible, beautiful descending bass line, only to hear Ice Ice Baby lay across the top of it a few seconds later?
There was a lawsuit about that.
And this is what I'm getting at. There is a way to remedy acts of theft, and I don't see AI as any different than any other player in the market, except for scale, of course.
Well, and that they're not held accountable. There's no accountability right now. It's all in court. We don't know what the law is going to.
Well, and here's the thing: they will be held accountable. It is in court. And that's the place where I think these questions need to be answered. But I do believe that there's a compelling argument, a strong argument, that AI models do need access to the entire corpus of information we can all learn from. Just as I can pull that quote from the Brady, but I can pull any quote from any book.
Almost don't you have to buy it first unless they offered it for free online?
Well, you know what? We will do a test between now and next week, and I'll get back to you on that. But I bet you I can pull any quote from even the most contemporary book.
Well, sure, but it has to be offered somewhere free. But it has to be offered somewhere free.
Yep. I'm sure this is the web. Google has made a whole bunch of information free, whether it's legal or not for them to do it.
Well, yeah, it's a little different because the free exchange with Google is you get traffic to your site to make money. So,
well, okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, look at what happened to the Internet Archive in their library. It's been shut down.
Although, indeed, the Internet Archive was publishing everything they could get their hands on, regardless of copyright. They were
but
publishing whole versions.
but
So
AI is
they were
training
trying
on
to
everything
act.
you've
They were
read.
trying to act as a lending library online.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different. And that I haven't read the judgment on that, but I think it's an interesting one.
And so people know their motives were not and were not nefarious. They were trying to offer books in places where people can't afford them or can't access them.
Google
So it wasn't
Books.
like what's that?
Google Books tried to do the same thing, although Google Books would have thrown ads around the content.
Yeah, yeah.
The
They were making more
archive.org
money.
wasn't doing that.
No, they really had a good intent behind what they were trying to do. So, but I'm just saying, but we don't hold AI to the same standards. There's no restriction to AI. It's like just crawl whatever you want, and then we can reproduce some similar version of it. And I don't think that's okay, especially for artists. And
well, as in the case with many human endeavors, there was no restriction on it until the humans knew they needed a restriction on it. It just seems that a bunch of people went out and did something, and then told everyone they went out and did it.
Ask forgiveness, not permission, right? That's what Uber did. That's how they got it. They would come into cities and set up shop before the regulations came up, and then the cities are like, we want you out, and people got used to using it by the time that went through court. So then the cities had to make deals with Uber to stay. Kind of the same idea. The only difference is though, so AI has two big Achilles heel.
Think of any technology, by the way, that hasn't done that in the past, from railroads. Seriously, from railroads.
There's two
onwards.
there's a lot that didn't just set up shop without regulation. That didn't happen. But the thing is with AI, there's two big Achilles heels. It has to be able to train on trillions of documents and sources, and power, how much power it takes to run it. But in this case, they picked the two biggest litigious industries in the United States to train on: imagery,
and
Getty,
publishing,
and especially music publishing. And video's next, because there's video GPT coming. So that trained on video, and a lot of that's going to be copyrighted material, and that's going to be obvious. The images and the video ones are more obvious because it's hard to detect like if a phrase came from somewhere, but a lot of times the logos still exist in the AI version of something. So it's like Getty knows it was Getty because Getty's logo appeared in the images. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in court, because those are the two biggest litigious industries in the country. And they might go after the people who use it as like they usually do, as opposed to the actual companies, because it's harder. You know, you get those DMC, that's a DMCA request. What is it with the music?
It's I believe it's DMCA, Protected Under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Yeah, so they put a little code in the music, and they can detect whether it's been downloaded or not illegally, and then you can get in trouble for that. And yeah,
if you publish images on your website without permission, moving forward, even if you generate them yourself through an AI, well, you know, understand this: if anyone else out there is using AI, it's the people who want to sue you. They will find you.
Getty will always find you. I remember like someone got a notice from like 5 years earlier when someone used one image on a website, and they found it, and they got a notice for $1,500 that they wanted. So, and Getty's very, very litigious. They're not asking you for like $50 or $10 it cost when you would have purchased it. They're like, we want like $10,000 for each instance that you use this image. So they're pretty bad.
Oh, and by the way, every time that image appears on somebody's browser is a time you used it.
Exactly. By the way, and people should be aware, it's still the law in the United States that anything created solely or almost solely with AI cannot be copyrighted. So if you're using like ChatGPT to create all your content, and you're not severely editing it, like rewriting the whole thing, it can be taken off your site and they can use it, and there's no way you can make a copyright claim.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've written a whole bunch of stuff that was copyrighted, had people lift it, and let me tell you, I can't go after them either, because it just costs too much for too little gain.
Exactly.
But every writer gets that.
So,
which is why I can tell you I can reproduce any paragraph ever written out there, because hell, I'm a writer of zero repute, and it's been done to me.
My only thing is it has to be free or open, offered for free, or you have to pay for it. Do we have time to get to the quick 2 Twitter stories?
Yeah, I think we do. We have about 3 minutes.
Okay, so So it's near and dear to your heart. So I'll let you lead on the government-funded media.
Okay. In almost every Western democracy, the United States included, there is publicly funded media. In the US, there's less funded than should be, but both NPR and PBS. In Canada, there's a Canadian broadcasting system. In the UK, there's the BBC.
New
There's
Zealand's like,
the Australian broadcasting system. There's Air New Zealand, etc. These publicly funded broadcasters are generally free of government control, but they receive monies from the government so that they don't have to rely on advertising. Because, well, our experience with news coverage that does rely on advertising, they tend to favor the advertisers. So if you have a news gathering source that doesn't have to worry about advertising, you'll likely have a cleaner and more professional news gathering source, provided it has a massive wall between it and its funder, the public purse. And that's an accepted reality in Canada. The CBC is not run by the government. It is funded by the government, most certainly, but it is not run by the government, as witnessed by the number of government scandals the CBC constantly uncovers and reports on, including innumerable Trudeau scandals.
yes.
Honestly,
No,
the
true.
CBC has twice in his 10-year prime ministership almost brought Justin Trudeau down because of catching him with his finger in some cookie jar or another, like most politicians. So, okay, so this is an important point. Publicly funded does not mean manipulated by the government.
Right. That's like China and Russia.
Well, yeah, okay, so in places like China and Russia and many authoritarian states, you do have direct manipulation by the funder. But then again, in many instances of corporate media, you also have direct manipulation by the funder, Fox News. This happens, mypillow.com. This happens. We know this.
And we know it actually from their texts and their emails, so people know that's not just you saying that. They actually.
Oh no, this came out in court. Oh well, it almost came out in court.
Yeah, it came out in pre-court discovery documents. So. And to clarify, and yes, I'm sorry, just real quick, so people do know, NPR takes 1% federal funding from grants that it competes for, and local NPR and PBS take 5% or less. So it's a very, very minor amount.
So in his continuing public disinformation campaign, Elon Musk, Twitter has branded a number of publicly funded Western media outlets, CBC, BBC, Air New Zealand, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, etc., as government owned or government operated, government funded, thus implying that they were manipulated by the government. Many of those broadcasters have now left Twitter because that's really uncool, and the platform itself is trying to discredit the news gathering corporation that uses the platform.
Right, because RT and China are the original reason for that label, and they are direct arms of the government. There's no separation at all.
So by the way, if you're a corporation, be aware, Twitter will mess with you if they don't like what you're doing. So the CBC foolishly replies to Twitter, we receive less than 70% of our funding from the government. They shouldn't have given Twitter the time of day. They should don't acknowledge a bully's bogus ranting. Right. You just don't do that. And so Elon Musk changed the notation to 69% government funded. Serious grade 7 edgelord stuff there. So this is the saga of, I mean, it's sad because Twitter remains a really useful utility platform that has been abused into uselessness by somebody who just doesn't understand what made the golden spoon that was shoved up his ass when he was born. Doesn't get the society that made his family rich.
Yeah.
and he wants to
so,
trash it. And I just don't understand that. It makes no sense to me.
well, I think the goal is to kill it. That's why. That's the only thing that makes sense. But if we have one more second, we can say that Microsoft has decided not to put up with Twitter and has dropped Twitter from its ad platform. So you can no longer use, there's no Twitter support, and you can't like post to Twitter using the ad platform because they started charging for the API anywhere from $42,000 to $210,000 a month to get access to it. So Microsoft said, no, thank you, we're gone.
Of course, it's the same company that refuses to pay its bills.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go. I'm so furious with Twitter about what they did to public broadcasters. Because this is the stuff that actually keeps democracy alive, and it's important.
It's very important, and people, need to be able to trust things like the public broadcasters, because as you said, they're not beholden to anybody except themselves and their own editorial departments. So they're not to advertisers or to governments, and so their news is one of the most trusted, which is probably why he did that.
Yeah, that's why BBC is one of the most credible sources in the world. Same with CBC. It's an extraordinarily credible source. But anyway, makes me infuriates me. And we've gone full clock. We've gone all the way around to the end of the hour. So on behalf of myself, Jim Hedger from Digital Always Media, I'd like to thank, I'm sorry, on behalf of Kristine Schachinger from Edge of That Walls, it's Jim Hedger from Digital Always Media. Want to thank WMR.fm, and I want to thank Ricky in the booth today. He's working well sick, so big love to our engineering team. Friends, be well, be safe, rank well. Keep your wits about you online, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everybody.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of WebmasterRadio.fm's management or sponsors. Any rebroadcast or redistribution without authorized consent of WebmasterRadio.fm is prohibited.